These are the SLC fanboys.
SLC fanboys, our big spoiler-free review of Star Wars The Last Jedi. Now, we've talked what you guys liked. I want to tell you what I liked about it as the self-proclaimed George Lucas apologist, comic book Jedi. What I liked about this, first of all, simple as fact as having the saga back on the screen again. It's where you mean to see it. It's an experience. It's seeing the blue lightsaber. And for me, it's seeing Luke Skywalker on screen again. I've been waiting to see Mark Hamill as Luke Skywalker on a movie since I was in first grade in 1983. That was the last time he did it. I've listened to all of the voice work he's done, including some Star Wars stuff. But to see him as Luke Skywalker again, I mean, you know, of course they play out before he finally speaks his first word. And I'm just like, what's he going to say? That's how excited I was. So I just loved seeing him up there again. In the deep dive, I'll give some more about that and different things that I felt as I watched it. But I loved seeing all these characters again. I mean, they were so likable in The Force Awakens. Rey, Poe, Finn, BB-8, all those guys. We get all them, and I finally get to have my favorite guy come on too. So I'm really excited about this. I really liked seeing that, you know, they did try to make the characters progress. They didn't just start them in the same place and finish them in the same place. We'll talk about that tomorrow too.
Yeah.
But they did try, let's just say that. Amazing action sequences.
Yes.
We can't talk about that till tomorrow. Holy
are
cow.
as good as they get.
If you thought the trailer had some awesome action, just you wait till what you get to see in the movie itself.
The effects for Snoke. I thought Snoke looked fantastic. It was one of the better, if not best, total CGI. That's total CGI, right?
Yeah,
that wasn't
yes.
a stand-in. That was one of the best total CGI characters that looked. I actually had to ask. That wasn't a stand-in with a little bit of makeup that they just digitally altered. That was all.
No, but I thought
CGI.
that they had Andy Serkis
they usually do
on
a
set
stand-in.
with the blue.
with the motion capture shots,
yes.
but all of his face and his facial expressions are all CGI.
Yeah,
that's
and
correct.
Yes.
It was
yeah.
strong.
And they did, and he did emote through his face, which was
Yes.
pretty his gnarled face.
And I thought one difference was his eyes looked really good. Like, it looked really good, so much so that I wonder, someone clearly either learned a lesson or improved some technology, because it's better than they did Tarkin in Rogue One.
Yeah, there's no question. Well, part of it is because it doesn't look quite so human.
Yeah.
So your eye's not going to be quite
we're
as
not trying to see
discriminating.
Peter
Yes.
Cushing. That's a good point.
Yeah,
That's
your
a good
brain.
point.
Yeah, because your brain knows Peter Cushing's dead and this is fake. So yeah, I understand that. But still, the animation on the Moff Tarkin, some of the action things from a year ago, I just thought were just a little off, and they avoided those with Snoke. And yeah, maybe it's because he was supposed to be an alien.
Well, and so I can't say much more, but I will say twists and turns and surprises. I try to pride myself on being able to guess certain plot twists and hooks. I don't think I got anything right. As I was watching, I think they're going to do this.
Nobody's going to get anything right
I think they're
in
gonna
this
do
show.
this. And I don't mean like what I thought was going to happen overall in the movie. I mean like at the third way point, I was like, oh, they'll probably do this coming up. Nope. They'll probably do this. Nope.
The operative line is the Skywalker line from the trailer. This isn't going to turn out the way you think it is.
Yeah,
that's
that's true.
That is
very
a
good
dead
point.
on, spot on description of the whole movie.
Rian
in a
Johnson
nutshell.
throwing in an Easter egg that we
Yeah.
didn't even know yet. All right, so
And I don't think it works. It's any more applicable than the previous trilogy characters that are in this movie. And I think that line
true also.
specifically applies to
it applies
them
to
the most.
everybody.
You know, a minute ago you're talking about how much you love the characters introduced in The Force Awakens.
Yes.
And how they continue that streak. I think, and to kind of tie it into our previous conversation, I think that's part of the strength of J.J. Abrams and why they want him back for that ninth movie. He does characters supremely. I mean, he just does them so much better than most of the directors out there. And I mean, don't even get me started on the clash between him and George Lucas. But you go back to just Star Trek 2009, how he brought all those characters back
true.
to life with just phenomenal scenes.
Vibrantly to life.
I mean, they were all, that's what the strength of that movie was just these great, faithful reproductions of these classic characters under his direction. The new characters in The Force Awakens were all outstanding, which was such a clash to the prequel trilogy, because even the ones you were supposed to like, you're like,
They were dead cardboard.
They were dead cardboard. And then I think they managed
Some
to up
more
it.
than others.
They still managed to up the ante, because I love Kelly Marie Tran's character in this
Yes.
movie. And I think her on-screen chemistry with John Boyega is just as good, if not better, than his with Daisy Ridley's in the first movie, which That's pretty spectacular. I'm beginning to
pull
wonder
that
if
off
John
twice.
Boyega is just a really talented actor.
I think he is. But I agree with you, and I think that is part of the magic that JJ brought to The Force Awakens. I mean, we can all agree that it had derivative, had its problems. This show succeeded where JJ's failed in those areas.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of this feeling like Star Wars, so much of that has to do with the characters. And I do hope and expect to see that come back for when JJ comes back for 9.
Well, I think they're in a no-win scenario. I mean, when something becomes this big, first of all, nothing's ever been this big. So they're just kind of playing it by ear. Mm-hmm. There's huge outcry if they do things one way. There's a huge outcry if they do things another way. And if they try to do things in the middle, then there's a third outcry from both sides that they didn't get what they want. So, to me, as I thought more about it, I said, okay, so if you're going to have twists and turns and surprises to as jaded and as movie savvy and as Star Wars savvy an audience as this fandom is, you got to do new and different. And that means you're going to get this thing where it doesn't, I think, this is why it doesn't necessarily feel like Star Wars. I use air quotes. But it has to be. If it's going to be anything different, if you're going to throw me for all those loops, you're going to have to do things a little bit different. And granted, I've only seen it once, and I do want to see it again to see if I feel the same way after the second time seeing it or the third time, which is what I usually do within the first week or so, see it 2 or 3 times. If I feel the same way after the third viewing, and how much do I want to rewatch this? Right now, I still feel like I'm going to want to rewatch this several times.
I think at the
Force Awakens, I was so traumatized that I didn't want to rewatch it, except I had already pre-purchased tickets to 2 other showings, and I went through it like, okay, get ready. I'm not gonna cry this time
because Han Solo.
It just wasn't ready for that.
Well, I think certainly. I think that there is a way to do new and different while still doing Star Wars, and I think this show overshot the mark. I do think that at the end of the day, like I said, this show's domestic box office gross will lag behind. I think Disney will listen to that and try and maybe split the baby between this and Force Awakens a little bit more. But Adam, you had an interesting point about this and the non-saga films.
Yeah, and I think that goes along to why we're calling, like Rogue One, why we say we feel that's a better, like a Star Wars movie. And let me expand on just that concept of what is a Star Wars movie. To me, Rogue One, especially that last 30 or 40 minutes, it just mirrored how you played with Star Wars action figures and the sets back in the 80s and 90s. You grabbed everything that was available, and you had big battles.
Yes, you did.
It didn't matter. X-Wings, A-Wings, Y-Wings.
He-Man action figures.
Figures, Death Stars. I mean, just grab them all, throw them in there, and have fun. And that's what that last 30 to 40 minutes felt like. And it mirrored so well, it copied that great last 30 to 40 minutes of Return of the Jedi when you had 2 major plots going on at the same time, tied together, and it was just back and forth. This battle to this battle, back to this battle, back to this battle, wraps up, here comes Vader. And I thought that just felt such like a Star Wars movie. And part of the reason is we didn't have any expectations in Rogue One, and we don't have any expectations.
No, we had low expectations.
Yes.
Like, are they going to screw this up, or what are they doing? They had to reshoot half of it.
Yeah, but we didn't have expectations as far as plot developments, as secrets that will be revealed, things about the Star Wars universe that we're going to learn that will give new insight into the other movies. It was always supposed to be just a background story about something we already knew, just expanded upon, and an excuse to make a movie that will earn $1 billion.
Which almost did.
And
it did. And there's nothing left over or carried over or that you need to understand.
Yeah, they were definitely going to wrap it up at the end of that movie no matter what, because we knew the ending point already.
Yes. And so I think that is why I think Han Solo, Solo, a Star Wars story, is set up to be another potentially really, really good Star Wars movie, because we're just going to learn a little bit more about something that character, something that's already familiar. And we don't need developments. We don't need to fill in blanks about who Snoke is, or did the Emperor really die, or
right.
Or who
No,
Rey's
that's true.
father is, or who her mother is. Any of that. And I think this movie is, unfortunately, this new prequel, this new trilogy, is saddled with a little bit of too much. Oh, we got to get these reveals out of the way. And I think it might be, to your point, they've gone a little too far with the reveals and the mystery.
And I think that that's true. But I also think, even in Rogue One, they had this idea of not just good versus evil, but light and darkness. Mm-hmm. That was very clear in Rogue One. That was very clear in Force Awakens. Mm-hmm. And I feel like they lost this thread of light and dark in The Last Jedi to some extent.
I think, I was okay with
as
that.
As a theme, not as an overt
that
principle.
Because in reality, that seems to be what's happening everywhere.
Star Wars is not reality.
No, I know that, but it often reflects it.
Well, I understand that. I'm just saying that I think that one of the reasons Rogue One succeeded was this. I agree with the expectations and things like that, but I think it did stick to the formula of light and dark, not just good and evil, but light and dark. And this show, I think, lost that in trying to be so innovative. And I think that's, if you really wanted to distill where The Last Jedi, I think, is gonna. Some people are gonna say, I really like that show, but it wasn't Star Wars. I think that's probably where it's gonna be.
Okay, fair enough. All right, well then let's hear final scores then as we wrap up our spoiler-free review, because we really can't do much more talking on this subject without actually going into plot details.
One more note.
Oh, do you got
one
something else?
One more note. Do you really recall any of the score from this movie?
Other
than the usual,
No.
I noticed Ray's cues.
Yeah.
No.
I'm just. I
If
was a
you
little
say a bad word about John Williams,
I was a little disappointed.
I will come over there.
I just thought that the score. I'm gonna have to watch the movie again and look for scenes where that, because even in Rogue One, I didn't think that Michael Giacchino knocked it out of the park, but there were some moments and some little cues that he used. I love the opening where they skipped over and it's just the quick little Lost desk like that.
Yeah, just jump right in.
Yeah, I like that, and I liked also that last 30 minutes, the Battle of Florida, as I like to call it.
Florida.
The music, that especially right at the very end when they met their fate, and then it transitioned back up to the Star Destroyer and the Vader scene. I thought his score through that, and the very end when he used the Vader theme, and then this movie came, and I'm like,
and the music, I actually had that thought in the theater, and my thought is Star Wars isn't Star Wars without the music, and the music isn't the music without Star Wars, and this show was kind of missing.
But guess what? No, I disagreed, because there were several times where I picked up on the cues, the musical cues for Rey's theme, the Resistance theme, Luke's theme.
Yeah, these are all prior existing cues. What about original music to this show?
That's the
or
thing.
even
I
those
don't know
done
it yet.
in new arrangements.
I couldn't listen to the soundtrack before. My soundtrack doesn't arrive until tomorrow. I pre-ordered it on Amazon.
I noticed it in the theater.
But I didn't want to even look at the track list. I remember catching cues, but I was so locked in on what was going on that the music, even the Force Awakens music, it took me a few listens through before it really started to grow on me.
Fascinating.
Just saying.
Well, what's everybody's final score?
The trailer music is so good.
Poe Dameron is a superstar. I think Oscar Isaac steals scenes in that movie. Great effects, good plot. 3 stars out of 4, and I think that's a solid 3. That's not a 3 with a 3.5 aftertaste or a 3 trying to be a 2.5. That's a 3. That's a solid 3.
Okay, Aaron?
I'm going to go 6.5 out of 10.
Okay. And you've explained
it
why.
was
above average.
It was a solid film, and it will be fine in the canon. And I think if Episode 9 really nails it, it will justify this film's existence. But as it stands, I would say overall, disappointed but not unhappy.
Okay, that's fair. I gave it 3.5 out of 4 on my TV review. I think most people will like it. I do think that the nitpicks will come out in a couple weeks once people have had time to digest it, but I think you'll walk out of the theater feeling excited, and that you'll be like, I liked that. And that's what I think most people will think that way, but I do recognize, because both you and your friend felt the same way walking out without necessarily
his opinion has only soured as time has gone on.
That's amazing.
In fact, driving home, he said he hit my dashboard, and he said, I was 12 when the prequels came out, so I didn't care because we were just pretending to be Darth Maul. But is this how it felt coming out of the prequels? Were your expectations this disappointed? Do you feel like you'd been robbed? And I was like, number one, this was not a prequel by any stretch of the imagination. But number two, yes, you're displaying all the symptoms of prequel letdown.
I did not feel that. And I think most people will almost everyone who wants to go see this is going to come out having liked it. And it's going to be a blast with everybody discussing it in the lobby.
Mark my words, over time it will fall a little bit from grace.
Okay, well, we shall see. Aaron's prediction comes here. Now, if you have, this was for the people who haven't seen it. If you have now seen Star Wars The Last Jedi, please download our other spoiler-filled deep dive podcast where we talk about all the amazing, crazy, or maybe not amazing, crazy because you haven't seen it yet, but all those things. We're going to talk about those in a separate podcast where you can really dig into all the stuff you saw in Star Wars The Last Jedi.
Thanks for checking out SLC Fanboys. Fulfill your destiny and follow us on social media. SLC Fanboys on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.